The morning they discharged me, I sent a message to the family group chat that my daughter-in-law had named the Hargroves Pond 3 years ago when she still pretended to like me. Hip replacement went well. Doctor cleared me this morning. Can someone come pick me up? I'm at St. Luke's on Brennan Avenue. I set the phone down on the adjustable tray table and watched the ceiling fan spin. It was one of those old hospitals where the rooms smelled like antiseptic and old carpet. I'd been there 4 days. 4 days of jello and blood pressure cuffs and nurses named Patty who called me Hon when they adjusted my IV. My son replied 11 minutes later, "Dad, we're kind of in the middle of something. Can you just call a lift?" I stared at that message for a long time. Then my daughter-in-law added her own reply right underneath his, like she'd been waiting with her thumbs hovering. "Honestly, the fresh air and the drive might do you good. Independent recovery is better anyway." Doctor probably said so. The doctor had said no such thing. The doctor had specifically told me I needed someone to help me in and out of the car, to assist me up the front steps, and to be nearby for the first 48 hours because of the anesthesia and the risk of falls. I didn't respond to either of them. I pressed the nurse call button instead. Patty came in and I told her I was ready to be discharged. She looked at me over her reading glasses and said, "Who's picking you up, sweetheart?" "I'm going to call a car," I said. She pressed her lips together. "Hospital policy requires." "I know the policy," I said. "I'm 68 years old, and I've had 2 knee scopes and a gallbladder removal. I know the policy." What I didn't say was that my son's house, which was technically my house, the house I'd owned for 31 years, the house I'd let them move into after my wife passed because my son said they were struggling, was 12 minutes away. 12 minutes. My son had replied from that house. He had been sitting on my couch in my living room, probably watching something on the television I'd bought, and he could not be bothered. The discharge nurse got me a wheelchair. A volunteer named Hector, maybe 22 years old with a Dodgers cap and a kind face, pushed me to the front entrance and helped me into the back seat of the car that arrived. I gripped the door handle with both hands getting in. My hip screamed. I didn't make a sound. The driver's name was shown in the app as Clifford A. I noticed he had a small American flag air freshener hanging from the rearview mirror and a Bible verse written in marker on a notacard taped to the dashboard. He looked back at me in the mirror as I settled in. "You all right back there?" he said. "I'll be fine," I said. "Surgery? Hip replacement?" He nodded slowly, like that meant something to him personally. "My mother had that done last spring," he said. "Tough recovery." "It is," I said. We drove in silence for a minute. Then he said, "Someone picking you up at home, I hope?" I looked out the window at the flat grey November sky and the Walgreens on the corner and the gas station with the broken sign that had been broken for 3 years. "I'll manage," I said. "My son's name is Brody. He's 41. He works in commercial insurance. He's the kind of man who irons his golf shirts and leaves other people's dishes in the sink. I love him the way you love. Someone you watched take his first steps. Someone you drove to the emergency room at 2 in the morning when he was 7 and had croup. Someone you paid the first and last month's rent for when he got his first apartment in Phoenix. You love them, and you also sometimes do not like them very much. His wife, I'm going to call her my daughter-in-law because that's what she is, technically, though the word daughter sits uncomfortable in that phrase. Her name is Sheila. She came into the picture about 6 years ago, pretty smart in a calculated way, the kind of woman who keeps a mental spreadsheet of every favor and every slight. She never liked me. I knew it from the second Thanksgiving she came to, when she sat across from me at the table I'd owned for 22 years and explained to my son, right in front of me, that her family had more sophisticated tastes when it came to holiday traditions. I said nothing. I've said nothing for 6 years. That was my first mistake. They'd moved into the house on Kellerman Street, my house, 18 months before my surgery. My son came to me saying they were underwater, credit card debt, a car loan that had gotten away from them, some investment that didn't pan out. I'm his father. I said yes. I said they could stay until they got back on their feet. I moved into the in-law suite above the detached garage, which I had originally built for my own mother before she passed. It has a kitchenette and a bathroom, and a little sitting room and a window that looks out over the backyard, where I planted a red maple in 1997 that is now genuinely enormous. What I did not do, and this is the thing that matters for what comes later, is add either of their names to the deed. That was not an accident. When Clifford pulled up to the house, I noticed Brody's truck was in the driveway. He was home. He had been home the whole time. Clifford saw it, too. He looked at the truck and then looked at me in the mirror and said nothing. He just got out, came around, and helped me out of the car. Stood there with his arm out until I had my balance on the cane the hospital had sent me home with. "Thank you," I said. I tipped him through the app. More than I should have, probably. "Take care of yourself," he said. He waited until I was up the front porch steps, all three of them, my hip complaining on each one, before he got back in the car. I let myself into the house with my key. Brody was in the living room. He had a bag of chips and a football game on. He looked up when I came through the door and said, "Oh, good, you made it." "I made it," I said. Sheila came from the kitchen. She had her hair up and was wearing yoga clothes. She looked at me standing in the doorway with a cane and said, "How was the ride?" I looked at her for a moment. "Fine," I said. "Good. You should probably rest. We converted the upstairs guest room to a home office last month, so you'll need to stay in the garage suite for now." I had not been told about the home office. I said, "Of course," and I went back out the front door and around the side of the house and up the stairs to the garage suite. Each step was a small negotiation with the pain. I sat on the edge of the bed for a long time after I got there, just sat and breathed. My wife's name was Lorraine. She died of a stroke 4 years ago, fast, in the kitchen, on a Sunday. The kind of death that doesn't give you time to say the right things. I've thought about her every day since. I thought about her that night in the garage suite, sitting on the edge of the bed with my hip throbbing and the November cold coming in under the door, and I thought, she would have known what to do. She always knew what to do. I didn't cry. I was past crying about it, but I did make a decision. Here is something nobody talks about when they talk about getting older. You become invisible. Not all at once, gradually. First, people stop asking your opinion. Then they start talking around you instead of to you. Then they make decisions about your house, your space, your life, and they tell you after the fact, or they don't tell you at all. You become furniture. Present, but unimportant. I had let that happen to me. I had been so tired after Lorraine died, so hollowed out, that I had just let things go, let Brody take over, let Sheila redecorate, let them make the guest room into an office without mentioning it. Let them treat me like a pleasant inconvenience. I'd been sitting in that garage suite for 1.5 years watching it happen and telling myself it was fine. It was family. You make accommodations for family. What I had not been paying attention to was what they were doing when they thought I wasn't watching. The day after I came home, Brody knocked on the garage suite door around 10 in the morning. I was moving slow, still figuring out the cane, still feeling the edges of the anesthesia. He had 2 cups of coffee, which surprised me. He handed me one and sat down in the small chair by the window and said, "How are you feeling?" "Better than yesterday," I said. He nodded. He had his serious face on, the one he used when he wanted something. "Dad," he said, "I've been thinking about the house, about the situation. I think it would make sense, given everything, to simplify the ownership, just legally, so there's no ambiguity if something were to happen." I sipped my coffee. "What kind of ambiguity?" "Just, estate stuff. It's cleaner if Sheila and I are on the deed. Then if anything happens to you, we don't have to go through probate. There's no delay, it's just seamless." "Ah," I said. "It's really just about protecting the asset." "The asset," I said. "You mean the house, right? The house. Protecting it for the family." I looked at him over my coffee cup. He was 41 years old, and he could not look me in the eye. He was looking at the window, at the red maple I'd planted, at the enormous flaming red maple that had started as a $6 sapling from the hardware store. "Let me think about it," I said. His shoulders came down about 1/2 inch. "Of course, no rush." He left. I sat there with my coffee, and I thought about what he'd said, and I thought about the timing. The day after I got home from a hip replacement. still on prescription painkillers, barely able to get to the bathroom without the cane. And I thought about how long they'd been planning to say that. Then I got out my phone and called my attorney. His name is Wendell Osey. I've known him for 22 years. He drew up Lorraine's and my wills. He handled a boundary dispute with a neighbor back in 2009, and he is one of the most careful people I have ever met. When I explained the situation to him, the house, the deed, the timing of the ask, he was quiet for a moment and then he said, "Don't sign anything." "I wasn't planning to," I said. "Come see me when you're mobile. Bring the deed." "What are we going to do?" "We're going to make sure," he said, "that you don't lose your house." I asked him what that looked like, and he explained some things to me. We talked for 45 minutes. By the end of the call, I had a plan. Not a complicated plan, but a thorough one. The pressure didn't let up after that. It was subtle, Sheila's specialty, but I felt it every day. She started bringing me dinner without being asked. Little containers of soup left outside the garage door, gentle knocks, just checking on you. Brody started coming by every morning with coffee. They offered to drive me to my follow-up appointments. They were attentive in a way they had never been before, a way that made my skin crawl because I understood exactly what it was. I accepted the soup. I accepted the coffee. I let them think I was warming up to the idea. One morning, about 10 days after I came home, Sheila brought up the deed question herself. She framed it differently than Brody had. She said she'd been thinking about how stressful it must be for me to manage everything alone, and how it would give her such peace of mind to be able to help me with the property in an official capacity, and how they both just wanted me to feel supported. I said, "I appreciate that, Sheila. Let me talk to my attorney." "Of course," she said. "We're not pushing. We just love you." She said that. "We just love you." I nodded and thanked her and went back inside and sat down and thought, I have lived 68 years and I know what love looks like, and that is not it. What Brody and Sheila did not know, could not have known, because I had never told them, was that 3 weeks before my surgery, Wendell and I had already met. Not about the deed, about something else. About a document called a transfer on death deed. In the state of Nevada, where I've lived for 31 years, you can file a transfer on death deed that designates who receives your property when you die automatically, without going through probate. It doesn't affect your ownership while you're alive. You can revoke it. You can change it, but it is recorded at the county recorder's office, and it is legally binding. I had already filed one. The beneficiary was not my son. It was the Lorraine Hargrove Memorial Scholarship Fund at the community college, where my wife had worked as an administrative assistant for 19 years. I had set up the fund 2 years after she died, small donations here and there, and I had never mentioned it to Brody, because frankly it wasn't his business. The house I'd owned for 31 years, the house Brody and Sheila were living in, planning their future in, angling to put their names on, was already committed, already spoken for. And it had been before any of this started. There was more, too. My bank accounts, my retirement, the small brokerage account Lorraine and I had built over 40 years of careful saving, all of it had been restructured in the months before my surgery into a revocable living trust. Wendell was the trustee. When I died, it would be distributed according to terms I had set. Brody was not excluded. He was going to receive something. But the house was not part of it. The house had a different future. I just hadn't told anyone yet. The thing about a plan is that you have to be patient. That's the part they don't show in the movies. The waiting. The coffee cups accepted. The soup eaten. The doctor's appointments where Sheila sat in the waiting room with her phone and her performance of concern. And I said thank you and I meant nothing by it. I went to physical therapy twice a week. I got stronger. By week 6, I was walking without the cane in the mornings, though I brought it along in the afternoons when the hips stiffened up. I started sitting outside in the afternoon when it wasn't too cold, in the old lawn chair by the red maple. One of those afternoons, my neighbor from 3 houses down, a retired postal worker named Augusto, who I've known since Clinton was in office, came by and sat with me for a while. We talked about his grandkids and a documentary he'd watched about the Dust Bowl and the way the neighborhood had changed. He asked how I was doing, really doing, and I told him some of it. He listened. When I was done, he said, "What are you going to do?" "I've already done it," I said. He looked at me. "You sure about that?" "I'm sure," I said. He nodded slowly. "Your wife would have liked this," he said. "She was never one for letting things lie." "No," I said. "She was not." Wendell called me on a Thursday in late January. He said everything was in order. He said I could move whenever I was ready, and he asked if I was sure about what I wanted to do next. I told him I was sure. "All right," he said. "I'll draft the notice. You want to serve it yourself, or should I send someone?" "I'll do it," I said. "I want to be there." The following Monday, I knocked on the door of my own house. Sheila answered, which surprised me. She had her surprise to see me face on for half a second, before she recovered into a smile. Come in, she said. "How's the hip?" "Better every day," I said. "Is Brody home?" "He's working from home today." "Let me get him." She got him. He came downstairs in his socks and a flannel shirt and said, "Dad, what's up?" I said, "Let's sit down. I have some things to share with you." We sat at the kitchen table. My kitchen table. The one I'd bought with Lorraine at a furniture store in Henderson in 2001. I had the folder from Wendell's office in front of me. I told them that I understood they had been waiting for me to respond about the deed. I said I'd given it a great deal of thought. I said I appreciated their concern for me and their desire to simplify things. Sheila leaned forward. Brody nodded. I opened the folder and slid the first document across the table. "This is a transfer on death deed that I filed with Clark County 3 months before my surgery," I said. "It transfers the property at this address to the Lorraine Hargrove Memorial Scholarship Fund upon my death. It was recorded in October. It cannot be contested." Sheila picked it up. I watched her read it. I watched her read it again. "This is, when did you?" "October," I said. Before the surgery, I confirmed. Brody was very still. He had his hands flat on the table. I slid the second document across. "This is a summary of my revocable living trust established the same month. All financial assets, accounts, retirement, investments are held in trust. The terms include provisions for both of you, though the specifics are between me and my attorney." Sheila put the first document down. I slid the third document across. "And this is a notice of non-renewal of the informal occupancy agreement for the property at this address. I'm giving you 60 days, which is more than required by Nevada law, for a month-to-month arrangement without a formal lease, which is what you have." The kitchen was very quiet. I could hear the refrigerator humming. I could hear a car going by outside. I could see the red maple through the window, bare now in January, but still enormous, still there. Brody said, "Dad, I'm not angry," I said. That was true. I wasn't. The anger had burned through in November, in the garage suite, the night I came home from the hospital on a stranger's arm. What was left was something quieter. Something that felt, honestly, a lot like clarity. "I'm not doing this to punish you. I'm doing this because I've spent the last 18 months making myself small in my own house, and that's over." Sheila said, "You can't actually do this." "I can," I said. "Wendell can walk you through the specifics if you'd like." "Wendell," she said. "Your attorney?" "Yes." She looked at Brody. Brody was looking at the table. "We have nowhere to go," she said. "You have 60 days, I said. "And Brody, you make a good living. You'll be fine." I closed the folder. I stood up, which took a moment because my hip was having a medium sort of morning. I picked up my folder and I said, "I'm moving back into the main house in 2 weeks. I'd appreciate if my guest room was cleared out by then." I let myself out the front door. I stood on the porch for a moment in the January cold. The street was quiet. 2 houses down, Augusto's truck was in the driveway. The bare trees made scratching sounds in the wind. I thought about calling Brody back. I thought about it for a real honest minute. I'm his father. That doesn't stop. That never stops us, no matter what they do. But I thought about the family group chat, the Hargroves, the 11 minutes before he responded. Call a lift. I thought about Sheila's text, "The fresh air will do you good," sent from my living room, sitting on my couch, in my house. I thought about Lorraine, who would have stood on this porch with her arms crossed and her jaw set, and who would have done exactly what I'd done, and who would have said, "You did the right thing, and you did it at the right time, And now stop second-guessing yourself. I went around to the garage suite and sat in my chair by the window and looked out at the red maple, enormous and bare and entirely still in the cold morning air. My phone buzzed. It was Brody. Then again. I set the phone face down on the table and I put the kettle on. And while I waited for the water to boil, I stood at the window and looked at the tree I had planted when my son was 10 years old, when his mother was alive, when everything was still ahead of us. It was the biggest thing in the yard now. It had outlasted almost everything I could have imagined for it. I made my tea. I sat down in my chair, and for the first time since October, since before the surgery, since before all of it, I felt like myself again. Like a man who still had things left to do. Like a man who had not run out of time. I let the phone buzz.